No. I hereby call this March 14th, 2025 public hearing of the City of Prescott Preservation Commission. Members present at this meeting are, we have James McCarver, we have Marianne Suttles, we have Diane Travers, Rob Johnson, Mike King, our new vice, Richard Sprang, and I am Michael Mirko, vice.
Rob Johnson?
Oh, I thought I called her.
You did?
Yeah.
Okay, I'm not awake. I'm sorry.
Wake up there, you young lady.
I have coffee.
Good. This is an open public hearing and is being recorded by the city. The proceedings are being televised by representative of the public media, local cable and/or radio stations, and may also be rebroadcasted. The number of commissioners, is 7, I believe. It will require the majority of the votes to pass a motion. All parties wishing to be heard will be expected to state their name for the record, and please speak loudly at the podium. All parties wishing to be heard will be expected to state, oh, I'm sorry, I read that already. Please put all electronic devices mute. Thank you. We also have staff members present. Our historian, Kaylee Nunez. George isn't here today? No.
George retired.
George retired? Oh my goodness. Miss DeWitt. Sorry.
Chelsea Walton.
Chelsea. Our recording secretary, Jacob Blood. Who else? Connie, are you here? No, I don't see Connie.
No.
Or the mayor. Anyway,
We don't have any, no council members present.
So we will proceed with the agenda. I believe our first item would be approval of the, it's been so long. Anybody have the date of our last meeting?
Mr. Chairman, I would make a motion we approve the November 8th, 2024
Thank you.
Prescott Preservation Commission meeting minutes.
Do I have a second on that?
Diane Travis, I second the motion.
Motion passed. All right. We have HP 25002, a request for approval of a new canvas fabric with lettering on the existing awning, on an existing awning frame. Prescott Sweet Treats. Downtown Courthouse Plaza location, property owner present?
Yes.
Yes, okay. Kayla, you want to take this?
Yes.
And go with it?
Thank you. All right. You do not need to speak yet.
Okay.
Yes. So good morning, commissioners. So today we have one regular voting item, HP 25-002. So here's a picture of the storefront when it was part of the Sam Hill Hardware Company. So it'd be on that very right side there, and a picture of the storefront presently. So as you can see, they do already have a wall-mounted sign and an awning with, I think it says Whiskey Row Ice Cream on the valance. So, here's an aerial map for clarification on the location. This is what they're proposing. So they're just going to replace the fabric. It's going to be striped, just different colors. And the lettering will be roughly the same size with historically compatible font reading Prescott Sweets and Treats. And I reviewed it against Chapter 8, the Courthouse Plaza District. And basically the couple points that relate to it. All colors should be of neutral tones, compatible with the building design and entire district. And the use of canvas or fabric awnings is encouraged at all locations. So the proposed awning will not negatively impact the historic status of the building nor the district as a whole. Recommended action, move to approve HP 25-002. And again, we do have the business owners here, Kevin and Cindy Ray, to answer any questions if you have them.
Any discussion?
Jim McCarr, I just had a couple questions to you, Kaylee. The color seemed sort of bright. Did you? Is that still fall in the neutral color?
It does. I looked it up online. It isn't a bright red. It's more muted. And let's see if I got. And oh, he has the sample. We come prepared. So
Well,
let's
then-
just pull that out.
The other question was size of the lettering. Are there any suggestions on how big or small you're allowed to have that?
Yeah, so I thought ahead on that, being that I'm a planner as well. And I was like, well, technically, per the current sign code, with the wall-mounted sign they have, they are at their maximum allotment. However, we considered a lettering on the valance grandfathered in. So the agreement we reached is that the new lettering would not be larger than the current. So therefore, it's not creating more of a distraction.
And there aren't any restrictions as far as having lettering on the awning and lettering on the front of the building,
Well, there are.
double dipping.
Well, no, there's nothing specifically in the code saying you can't have both, but what we have are square footage limits. So it's based on the lineal feet of store frontage. But again, we had a discussion, hey, you got to keep it the same size as the existing text and we'll be okay.
You have the color?
And it's really not, it looks, in my opinion, nice because you have, like the Grumpy Sicilian has a more bright red awning. And there's, Lifeways, I believe, has a purple one. I think it will be an upgrade. It will look nice.
Yeah, I like the color. Anything else? Well, do I have a motion on the floor? Or can I have a motion on the floor?
Mr. Chair, Diane Travis, I move to approve HP 25-002.
Second?
Marion Settle, second.
And all in favor?
Aye.
Motion approved. Good luck, folks. It's a great location.
Good ice cream, good
Yeah, but can you
taffy.
do something with the smell from the outside? Because every time I walk by there, it's like it draws me right in. So, especially when I have my grandkids, it's like a magnet.
I was wondering. Can we say something? So we're actually the new
Go,
owners.
you go ahead and go up to the podium. Yes.
So my business partner and I.
State your name, sir.
Caleb Chunglo, and then my business partner. We just took over Shade Beyond. I know you guys were very familiar with Wolfgang. And so this is our first meeting trying to get in here. It's been kind of hectic, taking over business, but we just want to introduce ourselves. I know Dana and Wolfgang worked really close with you guys to make sure that we keep the historic, look downtown. So we strive to do the same, and we just want to let you guys know that. We don't want to try and change anything and ruin that relationship. So we want to work really close with you guys just to let you know that. All right?
Great.
So Wolfgang finally got to retire.
He did. Yes, he did. Yeah, we took over in May last year. And then he stayed on until about November and officially retired. So
He used to do neon lighting. Are you guys carrying that out?
no, I don't think
Yeah, I'm pretty sure he did.
lighting.
A and B does that. but
Yeah, we work closely with A&B on stuff like that. But A&B does all like the stencils for us, so we do all the graphics and stuff like that. But
Great.
yeah. All
Well,
right.
thank you.
Thank you guys.
Thank you. And you guys can leave unless you want to
Yep.
sit through
Motion has been
commissioner
passed.
training.
So good
You're
luck.
welcome to.
Thank you. Thank you guys.
All right. Without further ado, we can pull up the next presentation. So I'm going to introduce Arianna Urban from the State Preservation Office. She is the CLG coordinator. Is that correct?
Yeah.
That's right. Certified local government. So she made the trek up this morning. And she has a nice presentation prepared for you all today. And you can come over here.
Oh,
if that
that'd be
works.
good. Yeah.
This has if you want it. Ooh.
What?
It has this, but the thing is you have to really go wide.
Okay.
It's a little,
Yeah.
it takes getting used to.
Okay. Whatever's more comfortable for you guys. I've got about an hour of content planned. If that works out. I've got about an hour of content planned. If that works okay. I could talk for a very long time. Obviously, this is my favorite thing in the whole world is doing this. So anyway, my chair, members of the commission, my name is Arianna Urban. As Kaylee said, I am the Certified Local Government Coordinator and also the planner for the State Historic Preservation Office. So as a certified local government, I'm here to coordinate you guys today. And I've just got some training for talking about design review. This is something that we've wanted to do for quite a while, and I have been I'll just pander to you guys for a second. I have been so impressed by the way you guys have conducted yourselves and been really thoughtful and intelligent and pragmatic about the whole Whiskey Row Hotel situation. I've been on that beat for it's been 2 years now, and have always just been cheering for you guys at home on my computer when I watch your commission meetings. So hopefully I'll just be able to give you guys a little bit more information and a little bit more reason why we do this. So let's get started. And I think I generally like to have these more as a little bit of a conversation, but since we're kind of short on time and we're not really sort of in the round today, maybe save your questions for the end, and then there'll be a couple times where I'll prompt you, and then we can have discussion if that works okay. Okay, so why do we do historic design review? I don't need to tell you guys this. Obviously, to protect the integrity of historic resources. That is why we're here. We all know and love and understand why it's important to save these things. Once they're gone, of course. We also obviously we want to ensure any of those proposed changes are compatible and respectful. We have to follow our preservation ordinance and have a public process, maintain consistency with our design guidelines, and of course comply with the requirements of the ordinance. But why do we do historic design review training? And this is where it gets a little interesting. What's important to me and what you guys deserve is to really have the information and the professional expertise to be able to feel empowered and confident in making your decisions and speaking up when there is a project that might, be on the fence or on the line with some of its design elements and how it might affect this sounds really loud to me. Is it normal to you guys? Okay. Is it a little loud? Okay. No, okay. I'll stick around here. Let me know if you can't hear me. And I what's important to me as the state is that you guys know exactly have all the knowledge you need, have all of the background you need, and really, get trained in some of this professional expertise. There'll be some terms that I bring up to you today that I call preservation school terms that literally I would only know because I have a master's degree in historic preservation, and very few other people have that. So I really want to be here to help you guys with any of the skills that you might need. And of course, we want to stay up to date on latest preservation best practices. That's what the Preservation Brief 16 is that I put in front of your guys. Chairs, we'll talk about it in a few minutes. So I went back to, I always go back to the beginning when I get a training session ready. So, we've got the land development code here. I'm going to bring this up on my computer as well because I can't see that far away. You guys have very clearly defined roles and powers in your preservation ordinance, which is great. Not every commission does. Of course, we know we want to review applications to establish new preservation districts and new landmarks. We've got those projects which are sometimes easy and sometimes hard about reviewing and approving potential changes, demolitions, things like that. My favorite one of these is always perform other preservation functions as the city council may provide. So sometimes I get commissioners or commissions that don't really know what their role is. And I'm not saying that is you guys here, but you really you guys are the experts of Prescott. You are the public, you represent the public interest, and also, you were seated because you have some knowledge and expertise in historic preservation. So I encourage you to take advantage of that and use your voices. Kaylee, of course, is absolutely wonderful. She is truly she's so good at her job and she's so good to work with. She has your best interests in mind as well. All right, let's see. So more specifically, I went to the other part of the land development code, and we're looking at, more of your powers and duties. And this one I exploded specifically because I wanted to make sure that you guys know that the design criteria of the district shall be used as a guideline for decisions. And that's a shall. I'm sure you've been over this at least once or twice in the past couple of years, but shall is very different than may be used or should be used. This is not up for discussion. It is the law in Prescott that these existing design guidelines will be used to review projects, and I'm here to help you interpret them and figure out what the best way is to apply them to these projects in the future. So this is the other reason we do historic preservation design training, and this was a little phrase that our previous deputy SHPO loved. He was an attorney, but I find it funny, so I like to use it too. What we can get into and what some preservation commissions get into a little bit hot water for is this idea of arbitrary and capricious decision making, which means, in fact, property owners feeling like, this is not necessarily the truth, but property owners feeling like the commission and the standards are not being applied equally to every single project. And, the worst thing that happens is when one property owner says, well, the commission let my neighbor build a second story in my house, but they won't let me build a second story on my house. And, these things happen all the time, and it is most often some kind of miscommunication or, difference of situation. Maybe it was a different commission entirely that approved that addition. So what we want to do in order to try and ameliorate as many of those, finger points as possible is to really understand the guidelines as best we can and apply them fairly, equally, evenly to all cases and all situations. And that's hard because at its heart, historic preservation is intrinsically, there's always going to be a little bit of subjectivity to it. Historic preservation is just as much of an art as it is as a science. And, the art comes into, this is the example here, we know that this feels wrong, right? Like we all look at this, everyone in this room looked at this proposal. I was horrified, Kaylee was horrified, we were all horrified. And because we're preservationists, we know in our gut that this is wrong. It doesn't feel good, it doesn't look good, we have this instinct that it's wrong. But to a property owner, we need to be able to explain why, and not just because, and that explanation needs to be more than, ooh, I don't like it, right? We need to be able to actually make bullet points and come across with clear reasons that are backed up in the historic preservation design guidelines about why this is wrong. And I pulled these from your guidelines. One, this is from the Whiskey Row section specifically, right? one-story building shall be between 18 and 24th Street in height. Two-story, no building should be greater than 48 feet in height, da-da-da. We have all these actual bullet points from the design guidelines. And Kaylee's presentation at the meeting where she, went through each design element and why and how it doesn't comply with the guidelines was masterful. I have her give it at our statewide trainings because it was so good and she did such a good job. So this is really why we do preservation design training, because we want to make sure that that these standards are being applied consistently across all projects. All right. And then this is kind of my preservation motto for 2024 and bringing it into 2025, right? There's a lot of misconceptions about historic preservation out there. We know that in here that's not the case, but there's a lot of misconceptions. People think preservation is just about taking a building and freezing it in a block of ice so it can never change. We never want anything to change. No one can paint their house any color they want, we are just looking for a freeze in time and that's it. And it's going to look like this forever. And we know that in most situations, that's not practical and it's not feasible. Change is one of those things that we can never stop, right? It's always coming. It's always going to march along. And instead of preservationists being the antagonists to change, like we are sometimes often seen as out there within the public, what we really want to sort of reframe it as is not being against change, but being able to help manage it. So historic preservation is really a tool in the toolbox of many planning tools we have to try and help manage that change, to try and help guide it, to try and help to sort of have those changes, whether they're new construction, new development, new subdivisions, to try to help any of those, future land use, building, development changes to incorporate historic resources and be respectful and compatible with, the parts of the historic landscape that are already here. And so, this is kind of a different way to think about it. We want to come to the table. We want to think about being flexible and being accommodating without compromising the real important historic resources. So, I'm not here to tell you to, throw all your principles out the window, but we just want to be able to have those principles be incorporated into future changes. And I don't need to tell you this, Prescott is the example that I literally use when I go all around the state of Arizona to do these trainings. People want to come to Prescott because of its authenticity, right? Because of the fact that the buildings really are from the 19th century. Whiskey Row really is where you could go and see the cowboys, have drinks back, dozens and dozens and dozens of years ago. We want to preserve people come from all over the world to see that specifically, right? They don't want to come to Disneyland. They don't want to come to Tombstone because those places are not real, and Prescott is. And so those real elements, these real historic places, this authenticity is what gives its town its character. And one by one, as soon as we start, losing building by building slowly, sometimes we think, oh, it's just one building. Oh, it's just one facade. But, when we turn around in 50 years and it's gone. And I call it the Applebee's effect, right? Every time we tear down a historic buildings to build an Applebee's, it little by little, the Applebee's pile up, and it just becomes, after a while, you turn around and your city is not recognizable. It's indistinguishable from any other city in America. And that's what we want to prevent, because Arizona is so special and so diverse, and Prescott is such, honestly, a pivotal part of that. Okay. Oh, I did it on my computer, sorry. We'll just jump right in. When we are reviewing potential changes, these are the standards that we use. And all of these three are specifically stated in the Historic Preservation Code. All the way on the left are the Secretary of the Interior standards for historic preservation. These are the federal guidelines that every single certified local government in the country uses in addition to local preservation design guidelines, which you guys have 2 sets of, which are also explicitly stated in the code. Yesterday, today, and tomorrow. Have you guys ever looked at this document, yesterday, today, and tomorrow? Okay, good. Yeah, that's true. I hadn't heard of it before, and I had to kind of go digging for it. But it's long, but it's a fun read.
I need to get a copy of that. They have the SOIS and the master plan.
Yeah. Yesterday, from what I recall, the yesterday, today, tomorrow is about mostly residential. And I read through it, and it's very nicely done, and it's of course from the 90s, like so many of these things are, but still applicable. So we'll go through it. We'll start with the national guidelines. This is stuff that probably isn't going to be new to you, and if you all look at me and are like, we already know this, just kind of give me a signal and I'll move on. But I want to make sure that everyone has the background for all this information. So I always like to start with integrity, with the 7 aspects of integrity. These are the, it's hard to explain these things. These are the qualities of historic character that buildings need to have in order to be considered good candidates for historic preservation. So some of them are a little more obvious than others. Obviously, location. We want the buildings to hopefully be in the location that they were built back in 1920. We want the materials to be the same. We want to see those the wood banisters and the stone foundations. Design is the same way. We're thinking about architectural style. We never want to see a craftsman home then turned into something from 1990. It doesn't feel good. It doesn't look good. Setting is similar. It has the landscape around it changed. Any sort of specific elements of craftsmanship that are really obvious. And then association and feeling, I call them the soft aspects, but we think about that in a way that would someone from 1920 be able to stand in front of this craftsman home, and would they recognize it? And if that is true, then we kind of we're more inclined to think the building often has enough integrity and it needs to be considered for preservation. So I'll go through these quickly. Obviously, has the property been moved, and how much does it matter? We do see examples of relocated properties where the new location is appropriate, and a little house that's going to be threatened to be demolished in one part of a historic district, we can see it moved to the other edge of the district, but it still maintains that association and its necessary context in order to still be listed on the National Register or local register. Design, of course, sometimes it's not obvious, like these 2 little pictures, but the original design intent of this house was a little side gabled roof, and some owners at some point decided to do these like little nesting gables, and it's a pretty significant alteration. It might not catch your eye as you're driving down the street, but it's just not what it was intended to be. Setting is an interesting one. This is the Benedictine Apartments, and we can hopefully I'll get to this example a little bit later, but on the left is before it was sold to a developer to build student apartments, and you can see the gardens, which are integral to monastic events, and then you can see on the right what happened, and it's a consideration of how important is the architectural setting to the integrity of the building. Materials is another good one. This example is hard to tell, but in this situation, the house on the left, the original house, had its original steel casement windows. Its brick was still visible. It had been painted over. We don't always want original brick to be painted, but in this case it had, and that's okay because you could still see the original brick. And it had a little glass block window on the right side. And when this house was flipped, all of those things were obscured. And this is an interesting case because we actually sent this one to the keeper of the National Register in Washington, D.C., and we at SHPO thought that the integrity was gone, but the folks at the Park Service didn't agree with us. They said, it's still mostly fine, and they neglected to remove it from the National Register. So these things are always ongoing conversations, and sometimes we don't always agree. Workmanship is a big one, of course. Any sort of any sort of manifestation of real craftsmanship, real expertise in detailing and masonry and woodworking. We want to make sure to preserve, because those are the kinds of things that we all know we don't always get anymore. It's hard to find. Feeling is another one. Feeling and association. These have to do with whether the building is still good at communicating itself, whether the building still looks the same, whether it still presents the same, whether people can still use it in the same way. Obviously, this Sonoran row house in Tucson on the left is not the same as how it was on the right, and really sort of the feeling and its association are gone. So integrity of a property, it's hard to quantify. We don't always know how to break down something like location, and how can we measure something like feeling and workmanship. And this is the best way we have to measure it. This is how we kind of quantify these things, through character defining features. And these are the actual physical elements of the building that we can point to and put our finger on and say, this is historic, this is original, and this is not. And so each building is going to have its own list of character defining features. And we actually do make these lists sometimes when we're looking at nominating buildings. We will count up the number of character defining features. And if it doesn't have enough, then it might not have the integrity that it needs to be considered for preservation or nomination to the National Register, perhaps. So this is an example from sort of the preservation Bible that we use, a field guide to American houses. But the character defining features on this little Tudor house, we can point them out. Obviously, the chimney stack, the half timbering. We know that Tudor style houses have very steep roofs, perhaps wood shingle roofs at that. The rows of windows, the size and shape, and the opening of the windows is also important. The little gable above the front door, the arched front door is another big one. And as soon as we start, letting the property owners, as soon as these little features start going, right? As soon as they square off the front door opening, as soon as they remove the chimney, as soon as they stucco over the half timbering or start filling in windows, little by little, the house loses its integrity to the point where, like I said, in 50 years, we turn around and we don't recognize the house anymore. So this is a little example that I pulled from Zillow, my favorite activity. And this is listed right now. And this is an English cottage style. So what do you guys see as the major character defining features here? Yep. That's called a rolled eave. That's a preservation term. Anything else? Yeah. Exactly. Yep. The stone, the flagstones, the wood elements on the front facade. What about the chimney? That'd be a good one. Yes, definitely. And here's a little fun example. This was before this house got flipped. And do you guys have this? Can you see it on your iPads? Okay, so I know something like character defining features can come down to the details. Sometimes we have to look closely at them. But the big one that I see here, they did a pretty good job. This is not the most catastrophic flip I've ever seen. The big difference, let's see if I can do this. The big difference is the little windows. These were the original leaded glass diamond pane windows, and they changed them into something different. I'll give them credit for not putting in, vinyl plastic windows. They did something that would be compatible, but these didn't need to go. They never do. So this is my fun example for now. We'll skip through a couple of these. This one I like. What about the Casa Grande Food City? Do you guys see character defining features here? Yep. Huh? Oh, no, just also let's see, we've got the neon sign we consider that a character defining feature. Also, and the whole sign sort of volume itself, and this little band of horizontal windows here is very early 1950s. And this building is in fact a contributor to the downtown Casa Grande Historic District. Okay, this is another one I like to talk about. We don't always think about these things, but we think about integrity in terms of how many of its original character-defining features we have left. We think about condition in terms of what shape those are in, right? So it's easy to look at a historic building that has been abandoned or vacant and go, ooh, ugh, that is in bad shape, right? That poor condition. But it still might actually have a lot of its character-defining features. They might, the paint might be peeling, the masonry might be failing, but it's still there. And these are the kinds of things that are really hard to replicate. So we think about buildings that we can have all four of these combinations. We can have buildings that are that have high integrity and are in good condition. Those are our favorites. But it's possible to have a lot of integrity but be in really poor condition. This is the Buckhorn Baths in Mesa. I'll use some Mesa examples. I was the historic preservation officer. I was the Kaylee of Mesa before I came to the city. So I'm sorry, to the state. So I have a special understanding of sort of this whole municipal process and have a lot of empathy for it. But you can see, the original stucco is still there. The windows, the window lintels, the vertical wood elements. These are all character-defining features that are failing, but they're still there. And it's possible to have a building that's in really nice condition, but super poor integrity. This is the Portland building in downtown Portland, Oregon. And this was a masterpiece, one of the first postmodern masterpieces by Michael Graves, who this building was listed on the National Register 10 years after it was built because it was considered so prominently to be such an important architectural piece of history. But it wasn't functional. The city of Portland, who had occupied it, said that there wasn't enough light. It was making people sick on the inside, and so they reskinned it. They literally took they decladded the entire building and put up a glass facade. And it looks completely different, and it was duly delisted from the National Register, even though it's fancy and is new and in great condition. And the last one, this poor little guy in downtown Phoenix, he does not have very good integrity. The roof has been altered, stucco, the windows have been removed, the porch is different. But this is a little late 19th century house. And it's been vacant and abandoned, and unfortunately in poor condition and poor integrity. And these are the most vulnerable buildings that we see. Does this make sense? Good, excellent, yes, good. Oh. Okay, so we've got integrity. We know how to sort of, quantify it with its character-defining features, and now these are the Secretary of the Interior standards. These are what you guys have been using in part to help understand whether a certificate of appropriateness should be approved or denied. And I like to think of these as really common sense things, right? We know we want to preserve as many architectural features as possible while still providing a building for its new use. We want to make sure we don't do anything to the building, clean it improperly, don't power wash bricks or masonry. I'll just shout that from the rooftops, and everyone here should too. And we always want to repair historic features rather than replace them if it's possible. And most importantly, or most controversially, when we have new additions and new construction in historic districts, it literally says here, we want to provide compatible and respectful additions and new construction. And that really is standard 9 and 10. Are those new additions reversible? Are they gonna, if a new owner in the future wants to remove that addition, will it irreparably harm the building? So those are 9 and 10 are the big ones, and we'll go through some examples here. So these standards we think of them as applied pretty much across the board to rehabilitation at this point, which is one of our 4 historic preservation treatments. rehabilitation, we say, is a new use, a new compatible use for a historic building. And it can involve some changes, right? It can involve ADA ramps. It can involve, HVAC changes. It can, sometimes even involve new entrances and exits. But vacant buildings deteriorate 5 times faster than occupied ones. So the urgency really is to get a vacant building occupied as quickly as possible. And if sometimes we need to, make some changes in order for a building to be brought back into use and to be a participating member of the community again, rehabilitation allows us to do that. Yeah, thank you. Yes, no, I love it. So I'll go through so these are, we say we have 10 standards here. I'll go through the important ones. Like I said, we want a new use that requires minimal change to those character defining features, but still some. This is the Van Buren music venue downtown, originally a car dealership. And so of course these garage doors, right, were converted to I'm blanking on the word. I'm so sorry. And converted to storefronts because a music venue doesn't need garage doors. These three windows remained the same, but the entrance was actually moved to the side here. So this is a great adaptive reuse project. And this building, was truly falling down. I didn't show you the middle picture, but now it's just such a popular spot to see a concert. We want to preserve those character-defining features, like I mentioned. This is the Casa Grande City Hall. It's the former Casa Grande High School, and you can pretty much look at it and tell that it's a high school, right? But they did need to, do a new entry sequence to make sure that it's accessible to everyone. And the interiors have been completely rearranged, except for the original auditorium, which is now their council chambers. And if you're ever in Casa Grande, I highly encourage you to check them out. It's beautiful. False sense of history is one that is also a little bit hard to explain, but very appropriate here in Tucson in Prescott to talk about. And it's hard to explain, but we want to avoid creating a false sense of historical development. And this is where sort of the Disneyland effect comes in, right? We want our buildings to still be real. We want our buildings to still look like they did in the 19th century. And we don't want anything fake, because that fakeness, we don't want fake 19th century buildings. We want real 19th century buildings. And when those fake buildings come in, they start to confuse visitors, and they go, why does Whiskey Row feel different than it used to? Like, I don't remember this. And it starts to put people off. And I tend to drag on Tombstone a little bit. I shouldn't necessarily. They are a National Historic Landmark and one of our most important places in Arizona. But Tombstone is not real. The Tombstone that we know today is not real. It had up until the 1950s, all of those, old Western 19th century buildings were still there. And in the post-war era, like so many towns did, it was decided that they needed to modernize, right? And so they added, mid-century modern type facades to all of those original buildings. And it didn't look the same anymore. And for whatever reason, in the 1960s, the town was considered a National Historic Landmark, the highest level of importance that we have in America in terms of historic designation. And then in the 1970s, whoever was making decisions in the town said, actually, we want it to look Old Western-y again. So they put 1970s Old Western facades on top of those 1950s facades, right? And so it starts becoming Disneyland. Like, we know that the real buildings are behind it, but if you walk up to this restaurant on the corner in Tombstone and you knock on the siding, it looks like it looks like it's old mined stone masonry, but it's hollow. It's pressed tin. These are the kinds of things that confuse visitors, confuse preservationists. I'll give you one last little example. If you see the second stories up on these buildings, they look a little squished, don't they? Not only are they false, not only are those just parapets with nothing behind them, but they are actually at 3/4 scale, which is exactly what Walt Disney decided to do at his buildings on Main Street, is a 3/4 scale to, I don't know why, but so it's important to think about these things. And, this is why Tombstone does not have the authenticity. It doesn't have the character that Prescott does. I'll just say it out loud. These are those character defining features. And, when thinking about workmanship and details and materials, we want to make sure and keep as many of those things as possible, of course. This is a little chapel in downtown Scottsdale that was converted to City of Scottsdale offices. This was the planning department in the early 2000s, but they decided to keep this little glass block cross and the bell tower itself, and these cool bricks around. And these are all the things that really kind of lend a visitor to notice that the building is in fact historic and cool, right? Everyone that walks into this office says, whoa, this is not your typical office building, because it isn't, because it's historic. This is one of my favorite Florence examples. I always tell people to go to Florence instead of Tombstone. And it is, standard 6 is to, of course, repair deteriorated features and replace them in kind. And if you do need to entirely rebuild them, we want to make sure to do it as close to the original as possible. So this is the Silver King Hotel. It was a ruin, right? The entire parapet here was, in craggles. It was falling down, and the town scraped together the money. I think they got a grant from us to help rebuild it. And you'll notice the railing here, right? It's hard to see, of course, but it has this neat staggered pattern in the railing. And we had this picture, right? This is like as good as it gets in terms of historical documentation. And it was very clear that this was what the railing was and that it needed to be reproduced. But of course, it's too short. We need to abide by current codes. And so they were able to just stretch the railing up a little bit to make sure it complied with the building code. But they replicated the pattern, the very distinctive pattern. And not only that, but the original railing was wood, of course, and they did this one in metal. And that's okay, because it's going to last longer, it's going to be safer. And of course, someone from the 1890s looking at this building, there's no question whether they would recognize it or not. It's a done deal. This is in Florence. Yeah, this is one of the first things you see coming into town in Florence from the northwest. So here's where we get into the weeds, right? Compatible and respectful additions and new construction. I could talk about this one for a while. I actually might just go ahead and do it because it's so interesting. This is the University of Washington, and these are pictures that I took myself when I was visiting a friend there. And on the left, I love this spotlight. On the left, you can see its original 1921 Gothic style library. It's just about as grand and stylish and a temple of learning as you can get. Let me pull it up here on my computer too. You can, you see the character defining Gothic style features, right? The pairs of windows, the pattern in the windows, sort of the vertical elements, how important that is. The sort of the arched windows down here on the bottom, the steep pointed roof, all like just peak academic Gothic style. But they needed an addition. And so in the 1960s, this is like a panorama. I know the perspective is a little funky, but in the 1960s, they needed an addition, and that's what this is here in the center, right? But you can see how they kind of looked at the original Gothic style and said, let's borrow some elements from that. Let's use these vertical lines. Let's have these little pointies at the top with some concrete lattice work to sort of evoke the window details here. Let's keep this arcade feature with the pointed roofs at the bottom, but let's do it in the contemporary style, which was that sort of, we call this new formalism at the time. It was popular for institutional buildings. So do you guys kind of see how they borrowed but still made it sort of into its own style? Good. Okay, so in the 1990s, maybe late 80s, early 90s, they needed another addition to the library, and that's what this is here over on the side. So once again, they said, we're going to do it in this, sort of academic postmodern, muted postmodern style. But once again, we're going to look back not only at the original Gothic building, but we're going to look back at the 1960s building, which is historic in and of itself now, and again borrow some of those features. So here you see the paired windows, and in the spandrels underneath the paired windows, you can it's hard to see, but there are some sort of those Gothic lattice elements that call back to the other two buildings. Again, you see the vertical pilasters here. You see the pointy roof here at the top with the circle window. So this was honestly like I just like needed a second when I looked at this because I couldn't believe what a good job the school did in really understanding how to do a new addition, compatible and respectful, while still making it very distinctive, of course, from the original construction. And this is what I mean by reversibility. This is just down the street from my office on the Capitol Mall. This is the 1937 State Agricultural Building. Beautiful building, no question about whether it's historic, should be preserved. And this is the 1957 addition on this side. Whoop, whoop. Meow. All right, this is the 1970s edition on that side. I'm sorry, 50s edition on that side. It's definitely distinctive, but I would say compatible. They copied or they sort of borrowed the brick construction, but made the window bands different and certainly distinctive. No one's going to think that these two buildings were built at the same time. And they were connected by this little hyphen here, which could easily be undone if the state ever wanted to tear down this portion of the building, which they actually did. And before the current sort of state recession that we're in, the 50s edition was actually slated for demo. So it would have been interesting to see what happened. Okay, so now let's go to the Prescott part of it. So what I just talked about, those are the sort of the common sense standards for buildings all over the country. But Prescott is obviously not similar to, and Prescott is super unique. There's no like standard all over the country that is gonna speak to the specific necessities of Prescott. How am I doing on time? I literally haven't been looking. Okay, shoot. Okay, so we'll go to the specific, I'll talk about a little bit more of the specific Prescott guidelines. Okay, 20 more minutes. Yeah, okay, that's totally fine. So we look at the Prescott specific standards. You guys are all experts on the Prescott Historic Preservation Master Plan. I know that for a fact. And these are the specific things that were written in order to preserve the important elements of Prescott, right? Site relationships, doors and windows, things like materials and open space that might not necessarily apply to buildings across the country that the federal guidelines can't address. So we'll look at things like site relationships, right? Here in the East Prescott District, all these houses have the same setback on this side, and they all have the same pattern of little outbuildings or garages on this side in the alley. In Hassayampa over here, the fact that this house is oriented a little bit diagonally towards the winding road that goes through Hassayampa, and the fact that the driveway kind of makes a little fork instead of this house just being traditionally oriented to the street. These are the kind of site relationships we want to be sure to preserve. Of course, landscape, streetscape is important. This is East Prescott again, and I'm just talking about the trees. The fact that these trees are very clearly planted in a uniform way to create a certain feeling that is still super, super evident.
That one on the right transposed wrong. It's actually Indian Hill.
Oh my gosh, I'm sorry.
No, that's okay.
Okay, so my bad. I promise that's what Google Maps said, you guys. This spiral approach to Indian Hill is super important to preserve. Obviously, that was a design element that is important to the historic integrity of the site. Form, scale, and massing. We all know about this one, right? This was sort of our refrain in the past 2 years. And I have a commercial example here because obviously I know this is sort of I can't remember the name of the street. It's a side street off of downtown. And obviously these buildings are not exactly the same form, scale, and massing, but they go with each other. They're compatible. And the reason I wanted to show you this was because the street slopes downward here. and so do the roof lines of the buildings, right? These are the kinds of things that historic architects were thinking about that developers today often don't really care about. And here's a residential example. All three of these little houses are the same size, the same shape. They're obviously not the same exact house. They're not the same architectural style, but they go together. Building materials, this is an obvious one. Like one of my favorite things about Prescott is the local masonry you guys have here. And honestly, one of my favorite things about Prescott is a lot of the new buildings. I remember it's like a Walgreens or something on the way into town that has a alluvial stone facade water table that, you know, someone in the planning department made a decision that new commercial buildings sometimes need to incorporate some of these features. Okay, so let's talk about a little bit of Preservation Brief 16. This is breaking news from the National Park Service. This just came out at the middle of last year. And these preservation briefs are like laws from the National Park Service, and not laws. These are guidance documents that we often follow. There's all kinds of different ones. Sometimes they're about how to survey a building or how to preserve your windows, or if you just have some time, Google preservation briefs, National Park Service, and there's about 50 of them at this point. But 16 was about compatible materials and replacing historic features. And in the past, it has always been you replace every single material in kind, no matter what. If the railing was wood and you're replacing it, it needs to be wood. If a cast iron fire escape needs replacing, you have to replace it in cast iron. It doesn't matter if cast iron is not a good material to use anymore. They were staunch on this. And now that's not the case anymore. They have come to realize that compatible materials are essential to doing preservation going forth in the future. That the railing that at the Silver King Hotel in Florence, that was a good example. And so they've actually, this document's worth reading cover to cover, I promise you. I was enthralled by it. And these are good guidelines now to start thinking about when you do have a certificate of appropriateness that comes off if someone does need to replace a chimney or a piece of a storefront. We can start looking at compatible materials that look the same. Visually, it does not disturb the integrity of the building, but the materials themselves are going to be more durable, more practical, sometimes more affordable than those original historic materials. So, noodle on this one. Please take a look at the brief. It's a good one. You know, obviously, we want to keep things like doors and windows the same. If this building didn't have its curved windows at the top with the cool layered window surrounds, it wouldn't be the same building anymore. If someone squared off those windows, it wouldn't have its integrity anymore. Open space, duh, obviously. We know about the most important open space in Prescott, but also this is over at the cemetery, right? The fact that this cemetery is an open space, and then the buildings, there's a wall, and then the buildings start over here. It lifts the sort of rhythm to building. Open space, different open space is really important. I'll skip that one. So these are, when we're thinking about design review, these are our key principles, right? We really want to think about whether it's appropriate, whether it's compatible, whether it's subordinate and respectful to the original historic building or the historic context around it. We want to think about making a minimal impact on that historic context or whatever historic resource might be potentially affected. And reversibility. We want to try and think about, is this new porch on the front of the house, it might not be perfect, but is it going to be reversible in the future one day? So let's talk about some examples. I will go through a couple of these, and then I have a fun exercise for us at the end that really is Prescott specific. So let's go through a couple of these. This is in Tucson. This is in one of the Barrio Historic Districts, and you can see the building on the left is the original Sonoran row house. This is the architectural style that is like native to Tucson. And really so important for the residential barrios. And this is what had happened to it on the right. Like, it's almost impossible to see where the original building was. Oops, let me move my little mouse. It's almost impossible to see where the original building was. This is a totally incompatible change. this did get delisted from the National Register of Historic Places. You can see the new volume in the back is too tall, and it's not the same building anymore. Oh, this is a good one. Okay, this is also, I work a lot in Tucson, so I often have some Tucson examples, so bear with me. But this is in one of the little residential historic districts. This is the original house. This is our SHPO photo from 1983. And this is how we found it one day. It had been not only gutted, but the rear wall had been torn down. The roof was gone, and we have a little joke, like if the building, if you can see through the building to vegetation on the other side, it probably doesn't have enough integrity anymore. And then, of course, there's always exceptions, but this was a choice that this flipper made, and then this up here was the final example. They obviously added a second story, which was not cool. Totally incompatible. And the other big thing they chose to do was to remove this little porte cochere on the side, which was, of course, original design feature. So this house, we got on it right away and kicked it off the National Register pretty much as soon as we could. Okay, so these are those apartments that I was talking about, the Benedictine apartments. You can see so clearly that, the grounds of this monastery were important and carefully designed, and really, really lent it a lot of its historic character and a lot of its historic context. Of course, we know, monastic life, part of it is walking contemplation around gardens, and that's what these had been used for since the 1920s when this building was built. And then this is what happened to it at the bottom. It has sort of a U of apartments around it. The apartments are by and large taller than most of the building. The bell tower itself is still taller, but they did this without telling us also. And so, and this building is individually listed on the National Register of Historic Places. So what do you think happened? Do you think that this building got delisted?
Arianna.
Yeah.
Was this U of A that did that?
No, this was a developer. No, these were not. Yeah, this was not. They should. They don't, but they should. Do you guys think we nixed this building? You think we should have? No. Some yeses, some nos? Okay. So we didn't. We decided that this building had enough architectural integrity, right? This mission style, looking at it standing on the street, is breathtaking. And there is no other building like this, not only in Tucson, in the entire state of Arizona, that is really this specific and this stylistic. So we made a tough call, and we decided that the landscaping itself was not enough to delist the building, but only because it is so architecturally significant. And that's a judgment call, right? There's that little piece of subjectivity that comes in.
Is this building in the historic district?
It actually is considered in a historic district, but it's also listed individually.
But did the change get made before all these requirements were in place? Was it before the historic plans were developed?
No. So we knew that there was going to be some kind of development there, but they didn't check back in with us about it until after construction had been well underway. So that, we always say, like, a surprise is not great. We want developers and owners to talk to us first so we can help develop plans that would be compatible and would be respectful. This really isn't, but because the building itself is just has such a high architectural value and style, we made the tough call to not pursue it for delisting. This is a tough one. This is a really tough one. Okay, here's another interesting one. Just about a year ago, in downtown Bisbee, there was a fire, a super devastating fire, and you can see it's these two buildings right here, this one and this one. Now, unfortunately, look like this. and the fire was pretty devastating, and thankfully it didn't damage the adjacent buildings to it. You can see this little pink guy right here is still there, right over here. But these buildings now are only one-story buildings, and we have some choices to make, right? Do we recommend that the city rebuilds the entire second story just as it is? We could do that, right? It's brick. It wouldn't be that hard to just recreate the second stories of the buildings. Do we suggest that the city just tears them down? You know, the buildings are, they obviously don't have the same form as the original architect intended. You know, would it be inappropriate to keep the buildings as they are? But on the other hand, downtown Bisbee doesn't have any infill. The whole sort of winding corridor of Main Street in Bisbee has no modern buildings in it. And so this would be the first infill in downtown Bisbee. Or do we suggest that maybe they shore off the buildings, they make a nice, you know, compatible parapet at the one story, keep them like that? It's tough. Do you guys have what would you guys recommend? Rebuild the second story? Oh, there is no insurance. Yeah, this was an electrical fire in the second story, and it was a unpermitted apartment, and the women had no insurance. So even more of a tough situation. That's all, you know, all these little things go into the factors, right? You know, we wouldn't think about insurance as a prescient historic preservation problem, but it often is, actually. Yeah, you guys want to rebuild the second story. And as Prescotton... Okay, yeah, no, and as Prescottonians, I very much understand why you would say that, right? Because, you know, you have a similar style of building and similar era of downtown, and that may happen, right? That would be a very valid scenario and suggestion. The idea that I had, not saying that it's right or wrong, but the idea that I had was for them to actually keep the buildings as one story. They don't look bad as one-story buildings. They're obviously not, they don't have the integrity that they used to. But at the same time, I wanted them to do some interpretation and maybe perhaps do a interpretive panel or plaque with photographs of what the buildings, you know, historic buildings before the fire, after the fire, and talk about what happened. And really, you know, one way that we can look at this is that fires happen and change, of course, happens, like I said. And sometimes these changes become part of the historic life of the building. Sometimes they become part of the historic narrative. And sometimes we have to go with it. And the best thing that we can do is document it and do some what we call interpretation, which can be anything from, you know, make a video about the history of the buildings. But I'm old school in the way I love a plaque. I love a bronze plaque on a building.
Sorry to interrupt.
Mm-hmm.
This is a great example. There's a building on North Cortez
Yeah.
that we did a workshop on
Cool.
for the conference.
Yeah.
And this kind of thing may have to happen with it because it's not financially feasible
Totally.
to keep those upper stories, and it's quite frankly dangerous.
Yeah.
So we might have to make a judgment call where we bring it down, we give some honor to the original
Right.
character.
Oh.
Sorry. So we have a building.
I just violated the rule. Like, I'm always telling people to come up to the microphone. North Cortez, the old Bucky O'Neill Hotel. We may have something like this happen just for the fact that it's not safe anymore. It's financially unfeasible probably to keep those up, at least the upper story. So we come to a compromise where we can bring it down, we can do an adaptive reuse and honor the original character. I'm not saying this is for sure happening, but I've had conversations with the owner. And so I really particularly love this example for that reason.
Yeah. Thank you. No, that's
Sorry to steal.
no.
So is-
I'm the guest here.
Is there money available? I mean, I think personally, I think it should have 2 stories and
Yeah.
make it look like it did originally. Is there money available to help the owners when
I
a
would-
situation like this?
I'm so sorry, Chair and Commissioner. Thank you. I can't read your name. There is not. No. Arizona just doesn't have the sort of institutional importance for things like historic preservation, and us at the city level suffer for it. So, especially for private property owners, there is no money for that. There is potential for an income tax credit, and that's a program with the IRS. But in terms of grant funding, it doesn't exist.
But this, if it's rebuilt some way, then it's not, and can't be placed on the historic register.
That's a good
for a while.
question. Can it? I mean, that's something that we would want to talk with our colleagues at the Park Service about. If it is rebuilt exactly the same, is there, of course, there's a reason to delist it because it's not original, but if it looks exactly the same, there's all these kinds of questions. I don't know the answer to that. I don't. And this is where, like I said, that sort of subjectivity can come in. This is kind of where the art of preservation starts.
Are the front facades staying the same?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yes. That's being preserved. Yes. Yeah. And we don't know what the city has decided to do with this yet. We gave them our recommendations, and we talked to them about all 3 ideas, but they haven't decided. So we'll keep you posted. All right. So this is the last thing I wanted to talk about, and this I also pulled from the Historic Preservation Master Plan. And I loved the beginning of this section because it's literally called "Threats to the Character of the District," right? This is what in 1997. The writers of the plan forecasted for what could possibly happen in the future. And this was specifically downtown Prescott. Increased pressure for larger commercial venues, demolition to make way for larger commercial and business uses, perhaps buildings that are proposed for taller than the courthouse, acquisition of several properties by the same developer to try and conglomerate lots to build bigger, potential projects that are just incompatible with the character and the history of the historic district, but are allowed under the current zoning code, which is, all these things are ringing very true to you guys, are they not? Right? And I was shocked by this because this literally is a list that we could write today, almost 30 years later. So I came up with this brand new exercise for you guys because I was so disappointed by this iteration of the building. This is the one that came to you guys first. What?
I said jump scare.
Jump scare. Right? I remember opening this file and going, oh no. And then I remember opening this file and being so relieved because this is so much more Prescott, you guys, than this. I don't need to tell you that, right? And obviously, right, we can see why the iteration of this building just doesn't work. This is, where we have that instinct that goes, no, it's wrong, right? And now we know exactly what standards, exactly what pieces and guidelines we can use, like you guys have always done, to apply to this building to break it down about why it's not compatible. Obviously, it doesn't fit. Oh, I'm sorry, I'm going the wrong way. Obviously, it just doesn't fit. In this version of the building, we can tell the developer why it does, why it is better. It's obviously not perfect, but it is just wildly better. And you can really see the careful intention behind a lot of, the brick, the pairs of windows, these little arches at the top, even the cornice and the parapet, the sort of the colonnade element down here. Then these openings are kind of evocative of the storefronts. This is even an awning that would have been on an old historic hotel. All these kinds of things are the testament to the planning department here, in terms of working with the property owner, the developer, to turn this into this. And the reason that really this horrified me so much is because I looked at it and I said, oh, that's the building from Kierland Commons in Scottsdale.
That's what I said, it looked like downtown Phoenix.
Exactly. And it took me about 60 seconds to come up with these exact other build. This is the one in Scottsdale that I thought of immediately. But then this is Farmingdale, New York. This is Starkville, Mississippi. This is Belmont, Pennsylvania. These are not, like, you can see how this style of building, it just doesn't mean anything. And it doesn't even try to blend into the other downtown buildings in Farmingdale, New York, I promise you. I found these you guys right away. And it took me about another 60 seconds to find these buildings, which are also, of course not exactly the same, but a little too similar to really think that these developers care. They don't, right? We know that they're interested in getting their building up as quickly as possible with the materials as cheaply as possible. And it just didn't stop. Do I have another slide? No, I decided to stop here because it was gonna get out of hand. But the fact that all these Florida, New Jersey, South Carolina, it's just this architectural manifestation that is happening all over the country. And this is part of the Applebee's effect, right? As soon as these buildings start looking exactly the same all over the place, Charlotte, North Carolina doesn't become distinctive from Sacramento, California. And of course, we know both of those cities have very important and rich histories. So something to think about. That's truly why I was so happy to see the redesign of the building. This is huge. And, as much as I really love the old City Hall, it's historic in and of itself at this point. And I hope the statue gets reincorporated somehow. Good. But, even the font on the letters on the side of the building, salvage those if you can, The light fixtures, those cool sconces. So anyway, I could go on. But, if it has to be replaced, which we know it does, I'm so glad that something like this is coming. So that's what I've got for you guys. Oops, again, wrong way. Thank you. So I won't scald your eyes with these anymore. Thank you. Thank you so much for listening. Thank you for participating, being so attentive. Thank you for volunteering your time, right? You guys don't get paid for this. And, just thank you for caring so much about Prescott and working so hard to protect its historic resources. So I want to express my gratitude.
And thank you.
Yeah,
very much.
Thanks. Please reach out. I'll give you all my business cards. I can always come back and do another training on another topic if you guys are encounter another sticky situation and you could use some training on literally whatever it is. I'm happy to come back. This is literally my job, and I love it so much. So thank you all. Yeah.
Thanks for the effort to get here.
I made it safely.
You risked life and limb. Okay, so thank you again, Arianna. I had one separate slide. I think it was staff updates. I want to talk to you guys about where the master plan update is. So the timeline has been pushed out, but we've got it firm now. We've had a couple staff meetings with our ops team. Right now, we are doing editing. I am doing editing, and there are a few chapters that I have to essentially, I wouldn't say, well, there's one I have to write from scratch, but the deadline to finish the complete draft is the end of this year. And then we will start taking it in sections to review starting January 2026. It'll be put in front of the commission. So with an overall completion date goal of spring 2026, of course, then we take it to council and it has to be adopted. So just want to let you know that is underway. What you are seeing there is that's not accessible to the public yet, but that will be our interface. Kat Moody really started this process and has set us up for success with our new website. Rick has taken hundreds of photos for us that will be incorporated in the new master plan, so thank you, Rick. And on that same wavelength, I wanted to recognize Mike King and Marianne Suttles. I just wanted to thank you for your contributions to this commission. And that is all I have. Oh, I know a couple of you are invested in that property off Mount Vernon on Goodwin Street. We have not forgotten about him. We have been in contact. He's kind of at a juncture right now where either you're going to see his project at the next Preservation Commission meeting or we're going to send him to our hearing officer. So just wanted to update you on that. And that is all yes.
Mr. Chairman, before you adjourn, if I could, being my last preservation meeting, not being reappointed, but appreciate serving on this board. I think we did some dynamite business in keeping Prescott. Appreciate serving with each and every one of you. Always boards need new faces, new eyes, things evolve. And for the time that I served here, we made some great decisions, and I was very happy to be part of it. Thank you, board.
Amen. Mike?
You'd think we both wrote the same speech, but that's where it is. I'm honored and privileged to have served on this commission as well, serving the commission, serving the city of Prescott, and the citizenry as well that come before us. I learned a lot. I tried to contribute as much as we could. Like Marianne said, the last couple, 3 years have been the most exciting. We made a big difference in this community, and I'm glad I got a chance to work with each one of you. I have great respect. I wish you the best in the future, and I wish our new members the same. It's a great opportunity to do community service, and God bless you all. Thank you.
Yeah, you both will be missed greatly.
Very much. Yes, I agree. Anybody else have anything to say? Oh.
I just wanted a little brief update. The general plan, I'm sure you've been following it. The notes in the paper and stuff is winding down, and it's going to the council meeting was a little bit cantankerous this week, but not much controversy. And I had the privilege of representing this commission, and from a historic preservation aspect, I think the general plan looks pretty good. And it'll be one more meeting, and I think things will get approved, and then it'll go to the voters this summer, right? So it's been fun to be involved in that.
Good morning, Commission. Chelsea Walton, Community Development Director. Thank you, Mr. McCarver, for that. Yes, it goes to Council on March 25th. This will be the second time that they've really dug into it and reviewed it. The hope is that if it does get approved at this Council meeting, it'll be on the primary ballot in August. If for whatever reason it does not get approved and council has additional changes or other thoughts, then it will be pushed out to the general election session in November, giving staff a little bit more time to incorporate whatever additional changes council might have. So we'll see on the 25th, but yeah, it has been quite the 2.5-year process. And thank you, Mr. McCarver, for your service on that. Thank you.
Any other comments? Well, then I'll adjourn this meeting.